Serena Moretti stood on the auction platform in bare feet, wrists bound, sweat dripping down her spine as men with dead eyes examined her like livestock. Her father's gambling debt had turned her into currency, and in 60 seconds she would belong to the highest bidder. The room stank of cigars and cruelty. She closed her eyes, searching for courage she didn't have, until heavy footsteps silenced every voice in that basement. When she looked up, a man in a black suit stood at the back of the crowd, and his single word changed everything. Mine. If you want to see how Serena's story unfolds from this moment of terror to something she never expected, stay with me until the very end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story reaches. Let's begin. The first time Serena truly understood fear, she was standing in her father's study with the door locked behind her and three men she'd never seen before sitting on the furniture like they owned it. "Your father made promises he couldn't keep," the oldest one said. He had gray hair slicked back with too much product and a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. "That makes you responsible now." Serena gripped the back of her father's chair. "I don't know what you're talking about. Doesn't matter if you know." The man smiled without warmth. "Debt doesn't care if you understand it. Your father borrowed 200,000 euros. He had 6 months to pay it back. That was 8 months ago." Her stomach dropped. "He told me he stopped. He swore he lied." The man stood and Serena took an instinctive step backward. "But you're a smart girl, literature student at the university, right? Top marks. Pretty face. You'll do just fine." "Do fine for what?" The man didn't answer. He just looked at the other two, and they rose in unison like trained dogs. "Wait," Serena said, voice cracking. "Where's my father? I want to talk to him." "Your father's gone. Left the country 2 days ago." The man walked toward her slowly. "Guess he figured out what was coming and decided to save himself instead of you." The words hit harder than a slap. Her father had run. He'd left her here to face this alone, to pay for his addiction with her life. "I don't have that kind of money," she whispered. "We know. That's why you're coming with us." She ran for the door, but one of the men was faster. His hand clamped around her arm, and she screamed, twisting and kicking, but it was useless. They dragged her through the apartment she'd lived in her whole life, past the books she'd spent years collecting, past the kitchen where her mother used to make Sunday dinners before the cancer took her. Everything blurred together as they hauled her down the stairwell and into a black van waiting at the curb. She fought until someone jabbed a needle into her neck, and then the world went soft and distant. When she woke, she was in a basement. The air smelled like mildew and rust. Her head throbbed. She was sitting in a metal chair with her wrists zip-tied in front of her, and when she looked around, she saw other women, young women, all of them tied up, all of them terrified. "Where are we?" Serena's voice came out hoarse. The girl next to her, maybe 18 with black hair and a split lip, didn't look at her. "Auction." "What?" "They're selling us." The girl's voice was flat, like she'd already given up. "Best thing you can do is stay quiet and hope whoever buys you isn't the worst one in the room." Serena's heart hammered so hard she thought it would break through her ribs. No, that's not. This can't be real." "It's real." The girl finally looked at her and her eyes were empty. "I've been here 3 days. You're the new batch." Serena pulled at the zip ties until her wrists bled, but they didn't budge. She looked around the room, counting. 12 women total. Some were crying, some were silent. One girl in the corner was rocking back and forth, muttering something Serena couldn't hear. The door opened and a man walked in. Not one of the three from her apartment. This one was younger, wearing a cheap suit and holding a clipboard. "Listen up," he said. "You're going upstairs in 10 minutes. When you get up there, you stand where you're told. You keep your mouth shut, and you do not make eye contact with anyone. You try to run, you get hurt. You try to fight, you get hurt worse. Understood?" No one answered. The man smirked. "Good. Let's go." They were herded upstairs in a line, wrists still bound, into a large room that had been set up like a theater. Rows of chairs faced a raised platform, lit by harsh white lights. Men were already seated, maybe 40 of them, all dressed in expensive suits, all watching with the same cold calculation. Serena was shoved onto the platform with 5 other women. The lights were so bright she couldn't see the faces in the audience clearly, but she could feel their eyes on her. A man with a microphone stepped forward. He spoke in Italian, fast and businesslike, rattling off details about each woman like they were cars at a dealership. Age, measurements, education, any special skills. When he got to Serena, he paused. This one's special, university educated, literature major, virgin. She flinched. How did they know that? Had they examined her while she was unconscious? The man grinned. Starting bid is 50,000. A voice from the crowd called out a number, then another. The bids climbed fast, 60, 70, 80,000 euros. Serena felt like she was going to vomit. 100,000, someone said. The auctioneer looked pleased. 100,000 euros. Do I hear 120? Silence. Going once? The door at the back of the room opened. Every head turned. The man who walked in didn't hurry. He moved like he had all the time in the world, and the crowd parted for him without being asked. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than Serena's entire education. His face was hard, all sharp angles and cold eyes, and when he looked at the platform, his gaze locked onto her. Serena couldn't breathe. The auctioneer's voice faltered. Signor De Luca, we weren't expecting— How much for the girl? The man's voice was low, calm, and absolutely final. She's at 100,000 right now. I'll pay 300. He didn't look at anyone else, just her. No one else bids. The room went silent. The auctioneer swallowed. Sold. The man, De Luca, walked forward. He climbed onto the platform and Serena shrank back, but there was nowhere to go. He pulled a knife from his jacket, and she gasped, but all he did was cut the zip ties off her wrists. Come with me, he said. You can come with me, or you can stay here and see who buys you next. His eyes didn't soften. Your choice. It wasn't a choice, it was an ultimatum. Serena's legs were shaking so badly she almost fell, but she forced herself to stand. He turned and walked off the platform, and she followed because the alternative was worse. No one tried to stop them. Stop. Outside, a black car was waiting. De Luca opened the back door and gestured for her to get in. She hesitated, and he sighed like she was wasting his time. I just paid 300,000 euros for you, he said. If I wanted to hurt you, I'd have done it already. She got in the car. He slid in beside her, and the driver pulled away from the curb without a word. Serena pressed herself against the opposite door, as far from him as she could get. Where are you taking me? She asked. Somewhere safe. Safe? She laughed, and it came out bitter and too loud. You just bought me like a piece of furniture. You think I feel safe? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a moment something almost human flickered across his face, but it was gone as fast as it appeared. Your father owed money to the wrong people, he said. They were going to sell you to someone who would have used you until there was nothing left. I stopped that from happening. Why? Because I could. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. The car drove for over an hour, leaving the city behind and heading toward the coast. Serena watched the lights fade in the rear-view mirror and felt the last thread of her old life snap. When they finally stopped, she looked out the window and saw a massive estate perched on a cliff overlooking the sea. Stone walls, iron gates, guard towers. It looked like a fortress. This is your home now, De Luca said. This isn't my home. This is a prison. He didn't argue. Inside, the place was beautiful in a cold, impersonal way. Marble floors, high ceilings, artwork that probably cost more than most people made in a lifetime. A woman in her 50s appeared from a side hallway, her expression neutral. Maria will show you to your room, De Luca said. You'll have everything you need. Except freedom. He paused, his hand on the banister of the staircase. You're alive. That's more than you would have had if I hadn't walked into that room tonight. Am I supposed to thank you? No. He looked at her, and his eyes were unreadable. But you will stay here, and you will not try to leave. If you do, I can't protect you from the men who wanted to buy you in the first place. Protect me? Serena's voice rose. You didn't protect me. You just outbid them. De Luca's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might say something else, but instead he turned and walked up the stairs without another word. Maria stepped forward. This way, signorina. Serena followed her in a daze. The room they led her to was large and furnished like something out of a hotel. King-sized bed, private bathroom, a balcony overlooking the water. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like a cage with expensive wallpaper. "If you need anything, press the button by the bed," Maria said. "Breakfast is at 8. Signor De Luca expects you to join him." "And if I don't?" Maria's expression didn't change. "Then he will come get you himself." She left, locking the door behind her. Serena stood in the center of the room, hugging herself, trying to process what had just happened. 24 hours ago, she'd been studying for exams. Now she was a prisoner in a stranger's house, bought like property, with no idea if she'd ever see the outside world again. She walked to the balcony and looked out at the dark water below. The drop was too far to survive. The walls were too high to climb. She was trapped. And somewhere in this house, the man who owned her was probably sleeping soundly. She didn't sleep at all that night. What? Morning came too fast. Maria knocked at 7:30, unlocking the door and setting a tray of food on the desk. "Signor De Luca is waiting for you in the dining room." Serena didn't move from the bed. "Tell him I'm not coming." "He said you would say that." Maria's tone was almost sympathetic. "He also said if you don't come down in 10 minutes, he'll carry you down himself." "Let him try." Maria left, and exactly 10 minutes later, the door opened again. This time, it was De Luca. He looked at her, still sitting on the bed in the clothes she'd been wearing since yesterday, and sighed, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Good." He crossed the room in 3 strides, and before she could react, he scooped her up like she weighed nothing. Serena yelped and tried to shove him away, but his grip was iron. "Put me down!" "When we get to the dining room." He carried her down the stairs while she beat her fists against his chest and cursed him in every language she knew. He didn't flinch. When they reached the dining room, he set her down in a chair and stepped back. "Eat," he said. "Go to hell." Already there. He sat across from her and poured himself a cup of coffee like this was a normal breakfast. "You need to eat. You didn't touch the food Maria brought you last night." "Maybe I'm planning to starve myself. Ever think of that?" His eyes narrowed. "Don't be stupid." "Stupid?" Serena leaned forward, anger burning through her fear. "You dragged me out of my life, paid for me like I'm an object, and locked me in this place. And you think I'm the one being stupid?" "You'd be dead or worse if I hadn't," he said flatly. "The men at that auction don't buy women to set them free. They buy them to break them. So yes, you're here, and yes, it's not ideal, but you're breathing and you're whole. That counts for something." "It counts for nothing if I'm not free." De Luca set his coffee down. "Freedom is overrated. Easy to say when you have it." "You think I'm free?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm as trapped as you are, just in a different kind of cage." Serena stared at him. For a moment she saw something flicker behind his eyes, something tired and worn down, but then it was gone. "Eat," he said again, softer this time. "Please." She hated that "please," hated that it made him sound almost human, but she was starving, so she picked up a piece of bread and ate it in silence. The days blurred together. Serena spent most of her time in her room or wandering the estate, always under the watchful eyes of guards. She tested the perimeter twice, looking for weak spots, but there were none. Every door was locked. Every window had sensors. Even the cliffs were monitored. De Luca was gone most days, disappearing before breakfast and returning late at night. When he was home, he kept his distance, like he didn't know what to do with her. She hated him, hated his control, his silence, the way he looked at her like she was a problem he hadn't figured out how to solve yet. But she also started noticing things, like the way he never raised his voice, even when she screamed at him, like the way he made sure Maria checked on her every few hours, like the scar on the back of his left hand that looked like someone had tried to carve his skin off. One night, 2 weeks after she'd arrived, Serena couldn't sleep. She wandered downstairs and found him in the study, sitting in the dark with a glass of whiskey. "Can't sleep either?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, surprised. "You should be in bed." "So should you." He didn't argue, just gestured to the chair across from him. Serena sat, pulling her knees to her chest. "Why did you really buy me?" De Luca swirled the whiskey in his glass. "I told you. You told me a lie." She looked at him. 300,000 euros is a lot of money to spend on a stranger just because you could. So why? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I had a sister once. She was younger than you, smarter, kinder. She got involved with the wrong man and he sold her to pay off a debt. His voice was flat, emotionless. By the time I found her, it was too late. She'd been passed around so many times she didn't even remember her own name. Serena's breath caught. I put a bullet in that man's head, DeLuca continued. And then I put bullets in everyone who touched her. But it didn't bring her back. She died 6 months later, overdose. Couldn't live with what had been done to her. He drained the whiskey in one swallow. So when I walked into that room and saw you standing there, I saw her. And I decided I wasn't going to let it happen again. Serena didn't know what to say. She'd spent 2 weeks hating him, and now he'd just handed her a piece of himself she didn't know what to do with. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. He stood, setting the glass down. It doesn't change anything. You're still here, and I'm still the man who bought you. But at least now you know why. He walked out, leaving her alone in the dark. Things shifted after that night. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in small ways. DeLuca started joining her for breakfast. They didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't as heavy. He brought her books from the city, literature, history, poetry, things he thought she'd like. He stopped locking her door at night, and Serena stopped trying to escape, not because she'd given up, but because she realized something. DeLuca wasn't her enemy. He was just as trapped as she was, playing a role in a world that didn't forgive weakness. One evening, a month after she'd arrived, they were sitting on the terrace watching the sunset. The sky was burning red and orange, and the sea below was calm. Do you ever think about leaving? She asked. All the time. Then why don't you? He looked at her. Because the moment I leave, everything I've built falls apart, and the people who depend on me end up dead. That's a lot of weight to carry. It is. He leaned back in his chair. But it's the only thing I know how to do. Serena studied his face, the hard lines, the tired eyes, the scars he tried to hide. You're not as terrible as you think you are. He laughed, and it sounded almost genuine. You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not, she smiled. But I'm learning. Something passed between them then, something unspoken and fragile and dangerous. DeLuca stood abruptly. I should go. Why? Because if I stay, I'll do something we'll both regret. He left before she could ask what he meant. 2 days later, everything went to hell. Serena was in the garden when she heard the gunfire. She froze, heart pounding, as shouts erupted from inside the house. Maria appeared, grabbed her arm, and dragged her toward the side entrance. What's happening? Serena gasped. They found you. Maria's face was white. Signor DeLuca's enemies, they're here for you. Why me? Because you matter to him, and that makes you a target. They ran through the hallways, Maria pulling her toward a hidden door in the back of the house. But before they reached it, 3 men appeared, blocking their path. Maria shoved Serena behind her. Run! I'm not leaving you. Run! Serena ran. She didn't know where she was going, just that she had to keep moving. She heard gunfire behind her, heard Maria scream, and then nothing. She burst through a side door and found herself on the cliffs overlooking the sea. The wind was howling, and the drop below was dizzying. Footsteps behind her, she turned and saw one of the men from the hallway, gun raised. Signor DeLuca's little pet, he sneered. He'll pay anything to get you back. He won't, Serena said, backing toward the edge. He doesn't care about me. Liar. The man stepped closer. Everyone knows you're his weakness now. She realized then what DeLuca had done. By keeping her close, by protecting her, he'd made her a weapon his enemies could use against him, and now she was going to die for it. The man raised the gun, and then DeLuca was there. He moved so fast Serena didn't see it coming. One moment the man was aiming at her, the next DeLuca had him by the throat, slamming him into the ground. The gun went off, the bullet ricocheting off the stone, and then DeLuca's fist connected with the man's face over and over until he stopped moving. Serena stood frozen, shaking, as DeLuca straightened and turned to her. His knuckles were bloody. His suit was torn. And his eyes were full of something she'd never seen before. Fear. Are you hurt? He asked, voice rough. She shook her head. He crossed to her in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault." "It's not." "It is." He pulled back, gripping her shoulders. "They came for you because of me. Because I kept you here. Because I—" He stopped himself. "Because what?" she whispered. He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "Because I care about you. And that makes you the most dangerous thing in my life." Before she could respond, more gunfire erupted from the house. DeLuca's expression hardened. "We need to get you out of here." "What about you?" "I'll handle this." "No." Serena grabbed his arm. "I'm not leaving you." "Serena?" "I'm not." He stared at her, jaw tight, and then he nodded. "Stay behind me. Don't do anything stupid." They ran back towards the house together, and Serena realized something that terrified her more than the gunfire, more than the blood, more than anything else. She didn't want to leave him. Not now. Not ever. And that meant she was in far more danger than she'd ever imagined. The house was a war zone. They moved through the smoke-filled corridors with DeLuca in front, his gun drawn, body tense like a coiled spring. Serena stayed close behind him, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. Every corner they turned could be their last, and she knew it. "Stay quiet," DeLuca said without looking back. "If I tell you to run, you run. You don't look back. You don't wait for me. Understood?" "No." He stopped and turned, eyes blazing. "This isn't negotiable." "Neither is me leaving you to die." She met his gaze without flinching. "So stop wasting time arguing and move." For a second, she thought he might actually smile, but then gunfire exploded somewhere to their left, and he grabbed her hand, pulling her down a side hallway toward the east wing. They found Marco, one of DeLuca's guards, slumped against the wall with blood soaking through his shirt. He looked up when they approached, his face gray. "They came through the south entrance," Marco gasped. 10, maybe 12 of them, Russo's men." DeLuca crouched beside him. "How many are left?" "Don't know. Shot 3 myself before—" He coughed and blood speckled his lips. "Before they got me." "Can you walk?" Marco tried to stand and collapsed. "No, boss, I'm done." "You're not done." DeLuca looked at Serena. "Help me get him up." Together they hauled Marco to his feet, slinging his arms over their shoulders. He was heavy, dead weight, but they managed to half-drag, half-carry him toward the north stairwell. Behind them, the sounds of fighting grew closer. Shouts, gunfire, breaking glass. They made it to the second floor before they ran into more trouble. 3 men appeared at the end of the hallway, and DeLuca shoved Serena and Marco into a side room, firing twice as the door slammed shut. 1 man went down. The other 2 scattered. "Stay here," DeLuca said, reloading. "Where are you going?" "To finish this." He was gone before she could argue. Serena pressed her back against the wall, trying to steady her breathing. Marco slumped beside her, eyes half closed. "He's insane," Marco muttered. "You know that, right? I'm starting to figure it out." "He cares about you." "Don't know if anyone told you that." Serena looked at him. "He bought me." "Yeah. And he's about to get himself killed trying to keep you alive." Marco coughed again, grimacing. "That's not something he'd do for just anyone." Before Serena could respond, the door exploded inward. A man stood in the doorway, tall, scarred, holding a gun that looked too big for his hands. He looked at Serena, then at Marco, and grinned. 2 for the price of 1. Serena grabbed the nearest thing she could find, a metal lamp, and swung it at his head. He ducked, but not fast enough. The base caught him across the temple, and he staggered back, cursing. Marco tried to reach for his gun, but his hand was shaking too badly. The man recovered and raised his weapon, aiming at Marco's chest. Serena didn't think. She threw herself forward, slamming into the man's side, and they both went down. The gun went off, the bullet burying itself in the ceiling, and then they were grappling on the floor. He was stronger, so much stronger. He flipped her onto her back, hands going for her throat, and she clawed at his face, gasping for air. Then DeLuca was there. He yanked the man off her, spun him around, and shot him twice in the chest. The man dropped. DeLuca stood over the body for a moment, breathing hard, and then turned to Serena. "I told you to stay put." He was going to kill Marco. "So you attacked him with a lamp?" "It worked, didn't it?" DeLuca stared at her, and then he did something she'd never seen him do before. He laughed, It was short, ragged, almost disbelieving, but it was real. "You're going to get yourself killed," he said. "Not if you keep showing up." He pulled her to her feet, his hand lingering on hers for a moment longer than necessary. "We need to move, now." They got Marco up again and made it down the back staircase to the garage. DeLuca's remaining guards had secured the area, and there were bodies on the ground, some in suits, some in tactical gear. "Russo?" DeLuca asked one of the guards. "Gone. Took off when the tide turned." DeLuca's jaw tightened. "Find him." "Boss?" "I said find him." His voice was ice. "I don't care if you have to burn the city down. I want him in front of me by morning." The guard nodded and disappeared. DeLuca turned to Serena. "Get in the car." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they won't find you." "What about you?" "I'll handle Russo." "That's not what I asked." He looked at her, and for the first time since the attack started, she saw exhaustion in his eyes. Not physical exhaustion, something deeper. The kind of tired that came from fighting too long and losing too much. "I'm not going anywhere," he said quietly. "Not until you're safe." They put Marco in this back seat and drove into the night. DeLuca didn't say where they were going, and Serena didn't ask. She just watched the lights of the estate disappear in the rearview mirror and wondered if she'd ever see it again. An hour later, they pulled up to a small house on the outskirts of a town Serena didn't recognize. It was tucked into the hills, hidden by trees, with no lights visible for miles. "Safe house," DeLuca explained, helping Marco inside. "No one knows about this place except me. And now me. And now you." They got Marco onto a couch, and DeLuca called a doctor he trusted, someone who asked no questions and took payment in cash. While they waited, Serena cleaned the blood off her hands in the kitchen sink and tried not to think about the fact that she'd nearly died 3 times in the last 2 hours. DeLuca appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. "You okay?" "Define okay." "Fair enough." He stepped into the kitchen, moving like every muscle hurt. "You did good back there." "I hit someone with a lamp. That's not exactly combat training." "You didn't freeze. Most people would have." Serena turned to face him. "Most people don't get dragged into gunfights because a mafia boss decided to keep them around." "No, they don't." He crossed the room slowly, stopping a few feet away. "I should have sent you away the moment I realized Russo knew about you. I didn't, and people died because of it." "That's not your fault." "It is." His voice was flat. "Everything that happened tonight is my fault. Maria's dead. Marco might not make it through the night, and you—" He stopped, jaw working. "You almost died. Because of me. I'm still here." "Barely." Serena stepped closer. "I'm here because you came for me. You could have left me on that cliff. You could have run when the shooting started. But you didn't." "That doesn't make it right." "No, but it makes you better than the men who came after us." DeLuca looked at her like she'd just said something in a language he didn't understand. "You don't know what I've done. The things I've had to do to stay alive in this world. If you did, I'd probably still be standing here." He reached out, almost hesitantly, and touched her cheek. His hand was rough, scarred, shaking slightly. "You should hate me." "I know." Her voice came out softer than she intended. "I keep trying to. Doesn't seem to be working." The space between them felt electric, charged with something neither of them wanted to name. DeLuca's thumb traced the edge of her jaw, and Serena's breath hitched. "This is a bad idea," he said. "Probably the worst. You should walk away, right now." "Where would I go?" He didn't have an answer for that. The doctor arrived 20 minutes later, a grizzled man in his 60s who looked like he'd seen too much and stopped caring decades ago. He worked on Marco without comment, stitching and bandaging while DeLuca paced the hallway and Serena made coffee no one would drink. When the doctor finally emerged, he wiped his hands on a towel and shook his head. "He'll live, but he needs rest. Real rest, not this running around getting shot nonsense." "Can he be moved?" DeLuca asked. "Not for a few days, maybe a week, if you want him to actually survive the trip." "Fine. I'll have someone come stay with him." The doctor looked at Serena, then back at DeLuca. "You taking her with you?" "No, she's staying here." "Like hell I am," Serena said from the kitchen doorway. DeLuca turned. "We've been over this." No, you made a decision without asking me. That's different. Serena, I'm not staying in a safe house while you go after Russo. She crossed her arms. You said he knows about me, which means hiding won't help. He'll just come back with more men and better weapons, and next time you might not be there to stop him. So what's your brilliant plan? Come with me and get shot? My brilliant plan is not letting you walk into a death trap alone. I won't be alone. I'll have people who work for you, people who'll die if things go wrong. She stepped closer. I'm not saying I can fight. I'm saying I'm not going to sit here and wait to find out if you're coming back. DeLuca stared at her. You're insane. Look who's talking. The doctor cleared his throat. I'm going to pretend I didn't hear any of this. Payments the usual? DeLuca handed him an envelope without looking away from Serena. Double. For your discretion. Always a pleasure, Adriano. After the doctor left, DeLuca sank into a chair and rubbed his face with both hands. You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it to me. Russo isn't just some rival trying to take territory. He's the one who sold my sister. DeLuca's voice was hollow. I've been hunting him for 5 years. Every time I get close, he disappears. Now he's surfaced because he thinks you're leverage. So use me. His head snapped up. Absolutely not. Why? You just said I'm leverage. Let him think he can get to you through me. Draw him out, then finish it. And if something goes wrong, if he kills you before I can stop him, then at least it'll be over. DeLuca stood so fast the chair scraped across the floor. Don't talk like that. Don't ever talk like that. Why do you care? The words came out sharper than she intended. I'm just some girl you bought at an auction. I'm nothing to you. You're not nothing, his voice cracked. You're... He stopped himself, fists clenching at his sides. I'm what? He looked at her, and the walls he'd kept up for so long finally crumbled. You're everything I should have walked away from the moment I saw you. Everything I can't afford to want. And every time I look at you, I remember that I'm not the man I used to be, and I'll never be the man you deserve. Serena's throat tightened. I don't want a man I deserve. I want... The words stuck. DeLuca crossed to her, moving slowly, giving her time to step back. She didn't. He stopped inches away, close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him, see the exhaustion and the fear and the hope he was trying so hard to hide. Tell me to stop, he said quietly. Tell me this is a mistake, and I'll walk away. It is a mistake. I know. We're both going to regret this. Probably. And I still don't trust you. Good. You shouldn't. She reached up and pulled him down, and he kissed her like he'd been holding back for years. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was desperate and messy and real, and when they finally broke apart, both of them were shaking. This doesn't change anything, Serena whispered. I know. I still think you're a terrible person. I am. And I'm still not staying in this house. DeLuca pressed his forehead against hers. You're going to get us both killed. Maybe. But at least we'll go down fighting. He laughed, and it sounded almost like relief. They stayed at the safe house for 3 days while DeLuca's people tracked Russo's movements. Serena spent most of that time with Marco, who turned out to be chattier than she'd expected once the painkillers kicked in. Boss never keeps women around, Marco said one afternoon while Serena changed his bandages. He's had plenty throw themselves at him, money, power, all that, but he always sends them away. Maybe he just has terrible taste. Or maybe he knows better than to let anyone get close. Marco winced as she tightened a wrap. He lost his sister, lost his parents before that. His whole family gone. People like that, they don't let themselves care anymore. Too dangerous. Then why keep me? Marco looked at her. You really don't know? Know what? He sees his sister in you, the girl she was before everything went wrong. And I think part of him believes that if he can keep you safe, maybe it'll make up for not saving her. Serena's hands stilled. That's not fair to either of us. No, it's not. Marco closed his eyes. But since when is life fair? That night, DeLuca received word that Russo had been spotted at a warehouse on the East Docks. It was a trap. Everyone knew it was a trap, but it didn't matter. This was as close as they were going to get. I'm going with you, Serena said when DeLuca told her. No. You don't get to decide that. Actually, I do. He checked his gun, expression grim. This is what I do, Serena. I walk into places like that and I kill people. You don't need to see that. I've already seen it. Not like this. She grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. If you die tonight, I need to know it wasn't because you were too busy worrying about me to watch your back. So either I come with you or I follow you in a stolen car. Your choice. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he sighed. You stay in the car. You don't get out unless I tell you to. Agreed? Agreed. And if something happens to me, you drive straight to the Italian border and don't stop until you're in France. There's money in the glove box. Enough to start over. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me. Serena swallowed hard. I promise. He kissed her then, hard and fast, like he was trying to memorize the feel of it. When he pulled back, his eyes were darker than she'd ever seen them. If I don't come back, you will. If I don't, you need to know... He stopped, jaw tightening. You need to know that I meant it. Everything I said. You're not nothing to me. You're everything. Before she could respond, one of his men knocked on the door, signaling it was time to go. The drive to the docks took 40 minutes. Serena sat in the back seat with her hands clenched in her lap, watching the city lights blur past. Luca was in the front, silent and still, his whole body coiled like he was preparing for war. When they arrived, the warehouse loomed ahead, massive, rusted, surrounded by shipping containers and empty lots. Luca's men spread out, taking positions, while he sat in the car and stared at the building. This is where my sister died, he said quietly. Not physically, but this is where they broke her, where she stopped being the person I knew. Serena leaned forward, resting her hand on his shoulder. Then end it, tonight. He turned, and the look in his eyes was pure steel. Stay in the car. I will. He got out, and 6 men followed him into the darkness. Serena waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then she heard the gunfire. It was different from the attack on the estate. More controlled, more deliberate. Whoever was shooting knew what they were doing. She gripped the door handle, forcing herself to stay still, to keep her promise. Then the explosions started. The first one rocked the car, shattering windows in the warehouse. The second was closer, loud enough to make her ears ring. Flames lit up the night, and she saw figures running, some toward the building, some away from it. And then she saw Luca. He was on the ground, pinned down behind a container, 3 men closing in on him. His gun was empty. She could see him reaching for another magazine, but it was too slow. They were too close. Serena threw open the car door and ran. She didn't think about the promise. Didn't think about the danger. She just ran, screaming his name, and the 3 men turned to look at her. It was enough. Luca lunged forward, taking down the first man with a knife she didn't know he'd been carrying. The second man swung around, firing, but Luca was already moving. 2 shots. Both men dropped. The third man grabbed Serena. His arm locked around her throat, and she felt the cold press of a gun barrel against her temple. Drop it, the man said. Luca froze, gun still raised. His eyes locked on Serena's, and she saw something she'd never seen before. Panic. Let her go, Russo. So this was him, the man who destroyed Luca's life. Serena could feel him breathing against her neck, could smell the sweat and gunpowder. You took everything from me, Russo said. My territory, my men, my reputation. Now I'm going to take the one thing you actually care about. She's got nothing to do with this. She's got everything to do with this. You made her matter. That was your mistake. Luca lowered his gun slowly. Let her go. I'll give you whatever you want. I want you dead. Russo's grip tightened. But I'll settle for watching you suffer. Serena felt the gun shift, felt his fingers start to squeeze the trigger, and then she bit down on his arm as hard as she could. Russo screamed, his grip loosening, and Serena threw herself forward. The gun went off, the bullet missing her by inches, and then Luca was there. What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but Serena saw every moment. Luca grabbed Russo's wrist, twisted until the gun fell, drove his knife into the man's side, and then shot him twice in the chest. Russo collapsed. Luca stood over him, breathing hard, and then turned to Serena. Are you hurt? She shook her head, unable to speak. He crossed to her, hands running over her arms, her shoulders, checking for injuries. You promised you'd stay in the car. I know. You could have been killed. I know. So why? Because I wasn't going to sit there and watch you die. Her voice broke. I couldn't. DeLuca pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Around them, the warehouse burned, and his men were securing the area, but none of it mattered. It's over, he said against her hair. It's finally over. Serena pulled back just enough to look at him. His face was covered in soot and blood, his eyes red-rimmed from smoke, and he'd never looked more human. Now what? She asked. Now we go home. And then? He touched her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. And then we figure out what the hell we're doing. She almost laughed. That's your big plan? It's the best I've got. It's terrible. I know. He kissed her forehead, soft and careful. But it's a start. They drove back to the estate as the sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Serena watched the world wake up and realized that for the first time since her father had sold her, she wasn't afraid. She was angry. She was confused. She was pretty sure she was making the worst decision of her life. But she wasn't afraid, and that had to count for something. The estate looked different in daylight, less like a fortress and more like what it actually was. A house full of bullet holes and broken windows, and memories neither of them wanted to keep. DeLuca stood in the main hallway, surveying the damage while his men cleared debris and patched walls. Serena watched him from the doorway, noting the way his shoulders tensed every time he looked at a bloodstain on the floor. We can rebuild, one of his lieutenants said, a stocky man named Carlo, who'd been with DeLuca since the beginning. Replace what got destroyed. Might take a few weeks, but no. DeLuca's voice was flat. We're not rebuilding. Carlo blinked. Boss? I want everyone out by the end of the month. Sell it, burn it down. I don't care. But I'm done with this place. Where are we supposed to go? Wherever you want. I'm releasing everyone from their contracts. Full severance, bonuses, references if you need them. He turned to face Carlo. You've all earned it. More than earned it. Carlo stared at him like he'd started speaking another language. You're shutting down the operation? I'm getting out. Out of what? The business? The life? All of it? All of it. The room went silent. Every man within earshot had stopped working to listen, and Serena could see the shock on their faces. Whatever they'd expected from tonight, it wasn't this. Boss, Carlo said carefully, you've been running things for 15 years. You've got territory in 6 cities, contracts with half the suppliers in Europe. You can't just walk away. Watch me. What about the people who depend on you? The families? They'll be taken care of. I'm setting up trusts for anyone who worked for me, enough to live on while they figure out what's next. DeLuca's expression didn't change. I've made my decision, Carlo. I'm done. Carlo looked at Serena, then back at DeLuca, and something shifted in his face. Understanding, maybe. Or resignation. It's because of her, isn't it? It's because I'm tired. DeLuca's voice dropped. I've been fighting this war for so long I forgot what I was fighting for. Now I remember, and I don't want it anymore. And if someone tries to take what's yours, then they can have it. I'm not going to die protecting an empire I never wanted in the first place. He walked away before Carlo could argue, heading upstairs without looking back. Serena followed, catching up to him on the second-floor landing. You're really doing this? She asked. Yes. Just like that? He stopped, turning to face her. You think this is easy for me? I've spent half my life building this, and now I'm tearing it all down because the alternative is watching you get killed for something that stopped mattering the moment I met you. I didn't ask you to give it up. I know. But I'm doing it anyway. He moved closer, and she could see the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Russo's dead. The people who wanted to hurt you are either dead or too scared to try, which means, for the first time in months, you're actually safe. And I'd rather spend the rest of my life making sure you stay that way than spend one more day building an empire on blood. Serena's chest tightened. What if you regret it? I won't. You don't know that. I do. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Because the only thing I've ever regretted was not walking away sooner. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was making a mistake, that he couldn't just abandon everything he'd built. But the look in his eyes stopped her. He wasn't running. He was choosing. And somehow, He was choosing her. "Where will we go?" she asked quietly. "Anywhere you want." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now." He smiled, and it looked almost real. "We'll figure it out, together." The word hung between them, fragile and terrifying and impossibly hopeful. The next 3 weeks were chaos. DeLuca worked around the clock, dismantling his operations piece by piece. He met with his contacts, dissolved partnerships, paid off debts, and made sure every person who'd worked for him had enough money to disappear if they needed to. Serena watched him burn through himself, running on coffee and stubbornness, barely sleeping, barely eating. She tried to help where she could, but most of what he was doing existed in a world she didn't understand. Meetings in back rooms with men whose names she wasn't supposed to know, phone calls in languages she didn't speak, negotiations that ended with handshakes and wire transfers. "You need to rest," she told him one night after finding him asleep at his desk, head pillowed on a stack of financial documents. He jerked awake, blinking. "What time is it?" "3 a.m. Come to bed." "I can't. I still have—" "It can wait." She pulled him to his feet, and he didn't resist. "You're no good to anyone if you collapse." He let her lead him upstairs, too tired to argue. When they reached the bedroom, he collapsed onto the bed, still fully dressed, and Serena sat beside him, brushing the hair back from his forehead. "You ever think about what your life would have been like if you'd never walked into that auction?" she asked. "No." "Why not?" "Because it doesn't matter." He caught her hand, pressing it against his cheek. "I can't change what happened. I can only decide what happens next." "And what do you want to happen next?" He pulled her down beside him, wrapping his arms around her. "I want to wake up next to you without worrying someone's going to kick the door in. I want to have breakfast without checking my gun first. I want to stop looking over my shoulder every time we leave the house." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I want a normal life. With you. If you'll let me." Serena's throat tightened. "I don't know how to do normal." "Neither do I, but we can learn." She kissed him then, soft and slow, and felt him relax for the first time in weeks. When they finally broke apart, he was already half asleep, his breathing evening out. Serena lay there beside him, watching the shadows move across the ceiling, and tried to imagine what normal looked like for two people who'd spent the last few months living in a war zone. She couldn't picture it. But maybe that was okay. Maybe they'd figure it out as they went. 2 days later, everything fell apart. Serena was in the garden when she started feeling sick. It came on fast, nausea that hit her like a punch to the gut, the world tilting sideways. She barely made it to the bathroom before she threw up, and when she finally stopped, she was shaking. She told herself it was stress, that it was just her body catching up to everything that had happened. But when it happened again the next morning, and the morning after that, she started to suspect the truth. She bought a test in town, sneaking out while DeLuca was in meetings. She took it in a gas station bathroom with her hands shaking so badly, she almost dropped it. 2 lines. Positive. She sat on the closed toilet lid, staring at the test, trying to process what this meant. She was pregnant, with DeLuca's child. In the middle of them, trying to escape the life that had nearly killed them both. She wanted to laugh, or scream, or maybe both. When she got back to the estate, DeLuca was waiting in the driveway. He took one look at her face and frowned. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "Serena." "I'm fine, just tired." He didn't believe her. She could see it in his eyes, but he didn't push. "Carlo called. He found a buyer for the estate. We can be out by the end of the week." "That's good." "Is it?" He stepped closer, studying her face. "Because you look like someone just told you the world's ending." "Maybe it is." The words slipped out before she could stop them. "What are you talking about?" She opened her mouth to tell him, but the words wouldn't come. How was she supposed to say this? How was she supposed to tell a man who just spent 3 weeks dismantling his entire life that she was about to make everything infinitely more complicated? "Serena." His hands cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. "Talk to me." "I'm pregnant." The silence stretched so long she thought maybe he hadn't heard her. But then his hands dropped, and he took a step back, and she saw the color drain from his face. "You're sure?" "I took a test. 2, actually, both positive." He turned away, running both hands through his hair. "When?" "I don't know, a few weeks, maybe?" I haven't exactly been keeping track. Does anyone else know? No, just you. He was quiet for a long time, staring out at the sea like it might have answers. Serena wrapped her arms around herself, feeling cold despite the warm air. Say something, she finally whispered. I don't know what to say. That's not helpful. He turned back to her, and the look on his face was something she couldn't read. Fear, maybe. Or shock. Or something worse. Are you angry? She asked. No, He stopped, shaking his head. I don't know what I am. That makes two of us. Do you want to keep it? The question hit her like a slap. Do you not want me to? That's not what I said. I'm asking what you want. Serena looked down at her stomach, still flat, showing no sign of the life growing inside her. A month ago, the answer would have been easy. She would have said no without hesitation, would have done whatever it took to get rid of the evidence of this nightmare. But now? Now everything was different. I don't know, she admitted. Part of me thinks this is the worst possible timing, that bringing a child into this mess is insane. But another part of me... She stopped, swallowing hard. Another part of me thinks maybe this is the one good thing that could come out of everything that's happened. DeLuca crossed to her slowly, like he was afraid sudden movement might shatter something. When he reached her, he placed one hand on her stomach, so gently she barely felt it. I never thought I'd have a family, he said quietly. After my sister died, I figured that part of my life was over, that I'd die alone in some back alley with a bullet in my chest and no one would care enough to mourn. That's depressing. It's realistic. His thumb traced small circles against her shirt. But then you showed up, and everything I thought I knew stopped making sense, and now you're telling me there's going to be a child. My child. And I don't know if I'm allowed to want that. Why wouldn't you be? Because I'm not a good man, Serena. I've killed people. I've destroyed lives. I've done things I can't take back. He looked at her, and his eyes were full of something that looked like pain. What kind of father would I be? What kind of life could I give a child? A better one than your father gave you. He flinched. That's a low bar. Then raise it. She covered his hand with hers. You said you wanted a normal life. Here's your chance. We can leave this place, go somewhere no one knows us, and start over. Really start over. No more running, no more fighting, just us and this baby and whatever future we decide to build. You make it sound easy. It won't be. But nothing worth doing ever is. DeLuca was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled her into his arms and held her like she was the only solid thing in a world that wouldn't stop spinning. I'm terrified, he admitted against her hair. Good. That means you care. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. We'll figure it out. What if I mess it up? Then we'll fix it. Together. He pulled back just enough to look at her. You're really okay with this? With having a child with me? I'm not okay with any of this. I'm scared out of my mind. But I'm not running. She touched his face, feeling the stubble rough against her palm. I'm choosing to stay. I'm choosing you. And I'm choosing this baby, even if it's completely insane. It is completely insane. I know. He kissed her then, and it felt different from every other kiss they'd shared. It felt like a promise. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. We need to leave. Soon. The longer we stay here, the more dangerous it gets. Where do we go? I've been looking at places. Small towns, out of the way, somewhere we can disappear. He hesitated. There's a house in the countryside, northern Italy, near the mountains. Quiet, isolated. It's been empty for years, but it's solid. We could fix it up, make it ours. Is it safe? Safer than here. He touched her stomach again, like he was still trying to convince himself it was real. I want our child to grow up somewhere green, somewhere without guards or guns or people trying to kill us. Sounds like a dream. Maybe. But I'm done living nightmares. They left 4 days later, in the middle of the night, with everything they owned packed into 2 bags. DeLuca drove while Serena dozed in the passenger seat, one hand resting on her stomach. The house was exactly what he'd described. Old, worn, surrounded by trees and hills and silence. It needed work. A lot of work. The roof leaked, half the windows were cracked, and the garden had turned into a jungle. But it was theirs. We can fix it, DeLuca said, standing in the overgrown driveway. It'll take time, but we can make it livable. Serena looked at the house, then at him. You know how to fix houses? No, but I'm a fast learner. She laughed, and it felt good, normal. This is going to be a disaster. Probably. He took her hand. But it's our disaster. They spent the first week just making the place habitable, clearing out the debris, patching the worst of the leaks, getting the electricity working. DeLuca worked like a man possessed, and Serena helped where she could, though he kept trying to make her rest. I'm pregnant, not broken, she told him after he'd insisted she sit down for the third time that day. I know, but you're also carrying my child, and I'm not taking any chances. You're going to drive me crazy, aren't you? Probably. She threw a paint-stained rag at his head, and he caught it, grinning. At night, they lay in the one room they'd managed to make comfortable, listening to the sounds of the countryside. No gunfire, no shouting, just wind and crickets and the occasional owl. Do you miss it? Serena asked one night. Miss what? The power, the control, everything you gave up. DeLuca was quiet for a long time. Sometimes, not the violence or the fear, but the certainty. I always knew what I was supposed to do, who I was supposed to be. Now I'm just... He stopped. I don't know what I am anymore. You're you. Isn't that enough? I don't know if I know who that is. Serena rolled onto her side, looking at him in the darkness. Then we'll figure it out, both of us. We've got time. Do we? His hand found hers under the blankets. What if someone finds us? What if they come after you after the baby? Then we'll handle it, like we've handled everything else. You're more optimistic than I deserve. Good thing I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me. She squeezed his hand. And for this baby. Who's going to need a father who's present, not one who's so busy worrying about the past that he forgets to live in the present? He pulled her closer, and she felt him smile against her hair. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just weren't paying attention. I'm paying attention now. As the weeks passed, the house slowly transformed. They painted walls, fixed windows, planted a garden. DeLuca learned carpentry from YouTube videos, and Serena learned to cook from a battered old cookbook they'd found in the kitchen. It wasn't perfect. The roof still leaked when it rained hard. The stove only worked half the time. And some nights, DeLuca woke up in a cold sweat, reaching for a gun that wasn't there anymore. But it was theirs. One afternoon, 3 months into the pregnancy, Serena was in the garden pulling weeds when she felt it. A flutter. So faint she almost missed it. The baby was moving. She sat back on her heels, one hand pressed to her stomach, and felt it again, stronger this time. Adriano, she called. He appeared from around the side of the house, wiping sawdust from his hands. What's wrong? Nothing. Come here. He crossed to her, concerned, and she grabbed his hand, pressing it against her stomach. Wait. They stayed like that, frozen in the garden, until it happened again, the flutter, the tiny, unmistakable proof that there was a life growing inside her. DeLuca's eyes went wide. Was that? Yes. It's real. His voice cracked. It's actually real. Did you think I was making it up? No, He swallowed hard. I didn't let myself believe it. Not really. I kept thinking something would go wrong, that we'd lose it, that I'd mess this up like I've messed up everything else. He looked at her, and there were tears in his eyes. But it's real. We're going to have a baby. Serena pulled him down beside her in the dirt, and they sat there together, his hand on her stomach, feeling their child move. We're going to be okay, she said. All 3 of us. You don't know that. No, but I believe it. She leaned against him. And that's going to have to be enough. That night, lying in bed, DeLuca traced patterns on her stomach and talked to the baby like it could hear him. Your mother's the strongest person I've ever met, he said quietly. She's also completely insane for staying with me, but I'm grateful she did. He paused. I don't know if I'll be a good father. I didn't have one growing up, so I'm not really sure what that looks like, but I promise I'll try. I'll try to be the kind of man you can be proud of, the kind of man who keeps you safe without making you feel trapped, the kind of man who loves your mother the way she deserves. Serena's chest tightened. Adriano, I'm not done. He kissed her stomach. I know I've done terrible things, things I can't take back, But I want you to know that from the moment I knew about you, everything changed. You made me want to be better, not just for your mother, but for myself, for you." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "So please be patient with me. I'm going to make mistakes, probably a lot of them, but I promise I'll never stop trying." Serena reached down, running her fingers through his hair. That's all anyone can ask for. He looked up at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes nearly broke her. "I'm scared." "I know, so am I." "What if I turn out like my father?" "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because you're already asking the question. Men like your father never do." She pulled him up beside her. "You're not him, Adriano. You're you, flawed and damaged and trying your best, and that's enough." He held her close, and they fell asleep like that, tangled together, while outside the world kept turning and inside her their child kept growing. The next morning, DeLuca woke before dawn and started building a crib. He'd never built furniture before, and it showed. The pieces didn't quite line up. The screws were crooked. But he kept at it, measuring and cutting and sanding, determined to get it right. Serena watched from the doorway, smiling. "You know we can just buy one, right?" "I want to make it." He didn't look up. "I want our child to have something I built with my own hands. Something that didn't come from blood money or dirty deals. Something clean. It's a crib, not a confession booth." Still, he tested a joint, frowning when it wobbled. "I need to do this." She understood. This wasn't about the crib. It was about proving to himself that he could create something instead of destroying it. So she let him work, bringing him water and food when he forgot to eat, sweeping up the sawdust, holding pieces steady while he hammered. It took him 2 weeks to finish, and when he did, the crib was crooked and rough and absolutely perfect. He stood back, studying it with a critical eye. "It's terrible. It's beautiful. The leg's uneven. I don't care. The paint job's a mess. Adriano." She took his hand. "It's perfect, because you made it, for our baby, and that's all that matters." He pulled her into his arms, and she felt him shake. Not from fear this time, from something else, something that looked a lot like hope. "I love you," he said against her hair. "I know I don't say it enough. I know I'm terrible at this, but I need you to know I love you, more than I've ever loved anything in my life." Serena's eyes burned. "I love you too, even though you're an idiot." He laughed, and it sounded free. They set up the crib in the corner of their bedroom, and every night before they went to sleep, Serena would stand beside it, imagining what it would look like with their baby inside. She couldn't wait to find out. The peace lasted 4 months. Serena was 7 months pregnant, moving slower now, her belly round and heavy. The baby kicked constantly, especially at night, and DeLuca would spend hours with his hand pressed against her stomach, marveling at every movement. They'd fallen into a rhythm. DeLuca worked on the house during the day, fixing things that had been broken for decades. Serena read books about childbirth and parenting, trying to prepare for something she had no idea how to do. In the evenings, they cooked together, sat on the porch watching the sun set over the hills, and pretended this was all there was. No past, no threat, just the two of them and the life they were building. But the past doesn't stay buried forever. Serena was hanging laundry in the garden when she saw the car. Black, expensive, coming up the dirt road too fast for a casual visit. Her heart stopped. She dropped the sheet she'd been holding and ran for the house. "Adriano!" He appeared in the doorway, saw her face, and understood immediately. "Get inside now." "Who is it?" "I don't know, but we're not waiting to find out." He grabbed the gun he kept hidden under the kitchen sink, old habits dying hard, and moved to the window. Serena stood behind him, one hand on her stomach, the baby rolling against her palm like it could sense her fear. The car stopped in front of the house, and 3 men got out. They were dressed too well for the countryside, and they moved with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. The one in front was older, gray-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than their entire house. He looked at the property like he was evaluating it, then turned his gaze to the front door. DeLuca's grip tightened on the gun. "Stay behind me." "Adriano, I mean it, Serena. Whatever happens, you stay behind me." The knock came hard and deliberate. 3 sharp raps that echoed through the house. DeLuca opened the door but didn't step outside. "Can I help you?" The gray-haired man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Adriano De Luca. It's been a long time. Not long enough, Vitale. Serena's stomach dropped. She knew that name. Everyone in De Luca's world knew that name. Giovanni Vitale, one of the old bosses, the kind of man who'd built his empire before De Luca was born and had no intention of giving it up. I heard you retired, Vitale said, his tone conversational. Walked away from everything, left your territory open for anyone to take. That's right? Interesting choice, especially for a man like you. Vitale's eyes shifted past De Luca, landing on Serena. And this must be the reason. The girl from the auction, the one you paid $300,000 for. De Luca moved, blocking Vitale's view. What do you want? To talk. May we come in? No. Vitale's smile faded. I'm trying to be polite, Adriano. Don't make this difficult. You showed up at my house uninvited. It's already difficult. Your house. Vitale looked around, taking in the peeling paint, the overgrown garden, the cracked driveway. Is that what you call this? A man of your talent, living like a peasant. It's almost sad. I like it here. I'm sure you do. Peace and quiet. No responsibilities. No one trying to kill you. Vitale's expression hardened. But the problem is, Adriano, you didn't just walk away. You dismantled everything, paid off your people, dissolved your contracts, left a power vacuum that's been causing problems for the rest of us. Not my problem. Actually, it is. Because the territory you abandoned, it's being fought over. 3 different families are tearing each other apart trying to claim it, and the violence is spilling into everyone else's business. De Luca's jaw tightened. Still not my problem. I disagree. Vitale stepped closer. You created this mess. You're going to fix it. No. That wasn't a request. I don't care. De Luca raised the gun, not quite pointing it at Vitale, but making the message clear. I'm done with that life. I'm not coming back. Not for you. Not for anyone. Vitale looked at the gun, then at De Luca, and laughed. You think that scares me? I've had guns pointed at my head by better men than you. Then you'll know I'm serious when I tell you to leave. I'll leave. But first, let me explain something. Vitale's voice dropped, losing the pretense of civility. You think you can just walk away, start a new life, raise a family like you're some kind of normal person? He gestured at Serena. You brought her into this world, you made her a target, and now you're trying to pretend that target disappeared because you moved to the countryside. If you're trying to threaten her, I'm not threatening anyone, I'm stating facts. Vitale's eyes were cold. You have 2 choices, Adriano. Come back and clean up the mess you made, or watch everything you tried to protect get destroyed anyway. Because eventually, someone's going to remember where you are. And when they do, they'll come here. And they won't be as polite as me. De Luca's finger moved to the trigger. Get out. 1 week, Vitale said, backing toward his car. Think about it. If I don't hear from you, I'll assume you've made your choice, and then you're on your own. He got in the car, and they drove away, leaving dust and dread in their wake. De Luca stood in the doorway for a long time after they left, staring at the empty road. Serena came up beside him, taking his free hand. He's bluffing, she said, trying to sound convinced. He has to be. He's not. De Luca's voice was hollow. He's right. I left a mess, and people are going to keep dying until someone takes control. That doesn't have to be you. No, but if it's not me, it'll be someone worse. He lowered the gun, looking at her. And eventually, that someone will decide I'm a loose end that needs to be tied up. So what do we do? I don't know. He touched her stomach, his hand trembling slightly. I thought we had more time. I thought we could just disappear and they'd forget about us. Maybe we still can. Maybe we just need to move again, somewhere farther away. There is no farther away, Serena. Not from this. He closed his eyes. I spent 15 years building a reputation. You don't just erase that by moving to the countryside. Then what, you go back? You give up everything we've built here? I don't want to. Then don't. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. She grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. You told me you were done. You said you wanted a different life. Were you lying? No. Then prove it. Tell Vitale to go to hell. Tell him you're not his problem anymore. And if someone comes for us, we'll handle it, like we always do. DeLuca looked at her like she'd just suggested they fight an army with their bare hands. You're 7 months pregnant. I'm aware. You can barely walk up the stairs without getting winded. I'm also aware of that. And you want to stay here, knowing someone might come? I want to stay here because this is our home. Because we've worked too hard to build this life to just throw it away the moment someone threatens it. She took his hand and pressed it against her stomach. This baby is going to be born here, in this house. And we're going to raise her here. And no one, not Vitale, not anyone, is going to take that away from us. Her? DeLuca's voice cracked. You think it's a girl? I know it is. How? I just do. She smiled. Call it mother's intuition? He pulled her into his arms, careful of her belly, and held her like she might disappear. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. That night, DeLuca didn't sleep. Serena woke up around 2 a.m. and found him sitting on the porch, staring at the stars. Can't shut your brain off? She asked, sitting beside him. Something like that. What are you thinking about? How to keep you safe? He didn't look at her. I've been running through scenarios, different ways this could play out. None of them are good. What if we called someone? One of your old contacts. And say what? Help me, I'm retired, but people won't leave me alone? He laughed bitterly. They'd hang up, or worse, they'd sell the information to whoever's willing to pay for it. What about the police? The police don't care about men like me. And even if they did, what would I tell them? That I'm a former crime boss being harassed by another crime boss? They'd arrest me just for admitting it. Serena was quiet for a moment. So we're really on our own. We've always been on our own. That's not true. We have each other. He finally looked at her, and his eyes were full of something that looked like grief. What if it's not enough? What if I can't protect you? Then we'll figure something else out. You're very calm about this. One of us has to be. She took his hand. Look, I'm terrified. I'm not going to pretend I'm not. But I'm not going to let fear dictate how we live. We've been through too much to give up now. You almost died because of me. And you almost died because of me. We're even. That's not how it works. Then how does it work, Adriano? Because I'm tired of you acting like you're the only one who gets to make decisions. This is my life too. And it's our baby's life. And I'm not going to let you sacrifice everything we've built because you're too scared to trust that we can handle whatever comes next. He stared at her, and then something in his expression shifted. You're right. I usually am. I've been so focused on what I've lost that I forgot what I have. He moved closer, resting his forehead against hers. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Just promise me you won't give up. On us. On this. I promise. They sat there together until the sun came up, and when it did, DeLuca made a decision. He called Vitale. I thought you might come to your senses, Vitale said when he answered. I'm not coming back, DeLuca said flatly. But I'll help you fix the territory problem on one condition, which is, after it's done, you leave me alone. You spread the word that I'm dead, retired, whatever story you want to tell. But no one comes looking for me, ever. Vitale was quiet for a moment. And what makes you think I'll agree to that? Because if you don't, I'll burn the entire territory to the ground before anyone can claim it. I still have enough contacts to make it happen. And then everyone loses. That's a bold threat. It's not a threat, it's a promise. Another pause. Then, fine. Fix the territory. I'll make sure no one bothers you again. I want it in writing. You don't trust me? No. Vitale laughed. Smart man. You'll have your contract by the end of the day. DeLuca hung up and turned to find Serena standing in the doorway, arms crossed. You're going back, she said. Temporarily. How temporarily? A week? Maybe 2? Just long enough to broker a deal between the families fighting over the territory. Once they have a structure in place, they won't need me anymore. And you think Vitale will keep his word? I think he wants the fighting to stop more than he wants revenge on me. And as long as I deliver, he'll leave us alone. Serena didn't look convinced. When do you leave? Tomorrow. That's fast. The faster I fix this, the faster I can come home. And what am I supposed to do while you're gone? Stay here. Stay safe. He crossed to her, taking both her hands. I'm leaving Marco here with you. He's healed up, and he knows how to handle trouble. If anything happens, anything at all, you call me immediately. Adriano, I know you hate this. I hate it too. But it's the only way to make sure we're really done. Once this is over, we can disappear. For real this time. You promise? I promise. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him this was a mistake, that he was walking back into the life he'd fought so hard to escape. But she could see the determination in his eyes, and she knew nothing she said would change his mind. So instead, she kissed him, hard and desperate, and full of all the things she couldn't say. Come back to me, she whispered against his mouth. Always. He left the next morning with a bag full of clean clothes and the weight of the world on his shoulders. Serena watched from the porch as his car disappeared down the road, one hand on her stomach, feeling the baby kick like it was trying to reassure her everything would be okay. Marco appeared beside her, his expression grim. He'll be fine. You don't know that. I know him. He's survived worse. That doesn't make me feel better. Marco was quiet for a moment. He loves you, you know, more than anything. That's why he's doing this, so you and the baby can have the life he never did. Serena's eyes burned. I just want him to come home. He will. But even Marco didn't sound convinced. The first few days were the hardest. Luca called every night, his voice tired but steady, updating her on the negotiations. The families were reluctant to cooperate, each one convinced they deserved the territory more than the others. But slowly, piece by piece, he was building a framework that might actually hold. It's going to work, he told her on the fourth night. Another few days and I'll have a signed agreement. Then I'm coming home. Promise? Promise. But on the sixth day, the calls stopped. Serena tried his number a dozen times, each call going straight to voicemail. She told herself it was nothing, that he was in a meeting or his phone had died or 100 other reasonable explanations. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. Marco tried to calm her down, but even he looked worried. I'll make some calls, see if anyone knows what's happening. He disappeared into the other room and Serena paced the kitchen, one hand on her stomach, trying not to panic. An hour later, Marco came back, his face pale. What? Serena demanded. What happened? There was an ambush. One of the families decided they didn't want to negotiate. They attacked the meeting. Serena's knees went weak. Is he? I don't know. My contact said there were casualties, but he didn't have names. We need to go. Now. Serena, you can't. I said now. Marco knew better than to argue with a pregnant woman on the edge of panic. He grabbed the keys, and they were on the road within minutes. The drive back to the city felt endless. Serena's mind spun through every worst-case scenario, each one more horrifying than the last. The baby kicked constantly, sensing her distress, and she pressed her hand against her stomach, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. They reached the city after dark. Marco drove straight to the building where the meeting had taken place, a neutral location, supposedly safe. It wasn't safe anymore. Police cars surrounded the building, lights flashing, and Serena could see body bags being loaded into ambulances. Her heart stopped. Stay in the car, Marco said. No. Serena, I'm not staying in the car. She opened the door and got out, ignoring Marco's protests. She pushed through the crowd, scanning every face, every stretcher, looking for him. A police officer tried to stop her, but she shoved past, moving on pure instinct. And then she saw him. He was sitting on the back of an ambulance, shirt torn and bloody, a paramedic stitching up a gash on his shoulder. He looked exhausted, battered, but alive. Alive. Serena's legs almost gave out. She ran to him, or as close to running as she could manage with her belly leading the way, and when he saw her, his eyes went wide. What are you doing here? He demanded, standing up so fast the paramedic protested. You're supposed to be at the house. She slapped him, not hard, but hard enough to make her point. You stopped calling, she said, her voice shaking. I thought you were dead. My phone got destroyed in the fighting. He touched her face, his hand trembling. I'm sorry. I should have found another way to contact you. You should have stayed home. I know. This was supposed to be over. It is. The deal's signed. Vitaly confirmed it an hour ago. It's done. Serena looked at the blood on his shirt, the bruises forming on his face, the exhaustion in his eyes. You're a mess. I've been better. We're going home. Right now. I don't care what you need to do. You're coming home. To me. To our baby. And you're never doing this again. DeLuca looked at her, and whatever argument he'd been planning died on his lips. Okay? Okay? Okay. Let's go home. They drove back through the night, Serena refusing to let go of his hand the entire way. When they finally reached the house, the sun was coming up, painting the hills gold. DeLuca stood in the driveway, looking at the place like he was seeing it for the first time. I'm never leaving again. You better not. He turned to her, pulling her close despite the awkward angle of her belly. I'm done, Serena. For real this time. No more deals, no more negotiations. Just us. And the baby. And the baby. He kissed her, soft and careful. I love you, both of you, more than anything in this world. Then prove it. Stay. I will. And for the first time since Vitale Ye had shown up at their door, Serena believed him. The last 2 months of pregnancy were the longest of Serena's life. Her back ached constantly. Her feet swelled so badly she could only wear one pair of shoes. The baby pressed against her ribs and bladder simultaneously, making sleep impossible and bathroom trips constant. She waddled more than walked, and getting up from a chair required strategic planning. DeLuca hovered like she was made of glass. He wouldn't let her lift anything heavier than a book. He insisted on helping her up and down the stairs, carrying her when she protested too much, and checking on her every hour like she might spontaneously combust if left alone. I'm pregnant. Not dying, she told him one afternoon after he'd physically picked her up to move her from the garden to the porch because the sun was too hot. I know that. Then stop treating me like I'm fragile. You're carrying my child. That makes you the most important thing in the world. So yes, I'm going to be careful. You're going to drive me insane. Better insane than hurt. She wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes stopped her. He was terrified. Not of the birth itself, but of losing her. She could see it in the way his hands shook when he touched her stomach, in the way he stayed awake at night watching her breathe, in the way he'd started reading pregnancy books like they were instruction manuals for defusing bombs. I'm not going anywhere, she said softly, taking his hand. The baby's healthy. I'm healthy. Everything's going to be fine. You don't know that. Neither do you. So we might as well believe the best instead of preparing for the worst. He pulled her close as her belly would allow, and pressed his face into her hair. I can't lose you. You won't. Promise me. I promise. She meant it when she said it, but promises, she was learning, didn't always hold up against reality. Labor started 3 days before her due date, at 2 a.m, with a contraction that felt like someone had wrapped a steel band around her middle and was slowly tightening it. Serena woke with a gasp, gripping the sheets, and DeLuca was awake instantly. What's wrong? I think another contraction hit, stronger this time, and she couldn't finish the sentence. DeLuca threw off the covers, already moving. The hospital. We need to get you to the hospital. It's an hour away. Then we need to leave now. He helped her out of bed, threw clothes at her, grabbed the bag they'd packed weeks ago. Serena tried to put on pants and gave up halfway through when another contraction nearly dropped her to her knees. Forget the pants, DeLuca said, scooping her up. We're leaving. I'm not going to the hospital without pants. Yes, you are. He carried her to the car despite her protests, came back for the bag, and they were on the road within 5 minutes. Serena sat in the passenger seat with a blanket over her lap, gripping the door handle every time a contraction hit. Breathe, DeLuca said, his voice tight. Just breathe. I am breathing. Breathe better. That's not helpful. He was driving too fast, taking corners like they were in an action movie, and Serena would have told him to slow down if she wasn't too busy trying not to scream. How far apart are the contractions? He asked. I don't know. 5 minutes? 4? That's too close. I'm aware. We should have left for the hospital yesterday. We should have just stayed there until you went into labor. That's insane. It would have been safer. Another contraction hit, and Serena couldn't argue through the pain. She just focused on breathing, counting seconds, trying to remember everything she'd read about labor and finding none of it helpful. They made it to the hospital in 45 minutes, which was probably some kind of land speed record. DeLuca pulled up to the emergency entrance, left the car running, and carried Serena inside like she weighed nothing. A nurse took one look at them and grabbed a wheelchair. "How far along?" "Contractions every 4 minutes," DeLuca said. "Maybe less." "First baby?" "Yes." "Okay, let's get you to a room." They moved fast, wheeling Serena down hallways and into an elevator, DeLuca refusing to let go of her hand. By the time they got her into a delivery room and onto the bed, the contractions were coming every 3 minutes, and Serena was starting to understand why people called this labor. A doctor appeared, young, confident, with kind eyes, and checked her progress. "You're at 6 centimeters, moving fast for a first baby." "Is that good?" DeLuca asked. "It means we're probably looking at a few more hours, maybe less." "Hours?" Serena's voice cracked. "I can't do this for hours." "Yes, you can," the doctor said calmly. "You're already doing it, and we're right here with you." The next hours were a blur of pain and breathing exercises, and DeLuca's voice in her ear, steady and constant, telling her she was strong, she was doing great, she could do this. Serena didn't feel strong. She felt like she was being torn apart from the inside, but every time she wanted to give up, every time she thought she couldn't take another contraction, she'd look at DeLuca's face and see the fear and hope mixed together, and she'd find the strength to keep going. "I hate you for this," she told him during a particularly brutal contraction. "I know. This is your fault. I know. I'm never doing this again. Okay? I mean it. I believe you." Another contraction hit, and she squeezed his hand so hard she heard bones crack. He didn't flinch. At hour 4, the doctor checked her again and nodded. "You're ready. Next contraction, I need you to push." Serena's heart hammered. "I don't think I can." "You can," DeLuca said, his face close to hers. "You're the strongest person I know. You can do this." "What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing's going to go wrong." "You don't know that." "Then we'll handle it, together." He kissed her forehead. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." The next contraction came, and Serena pushed with everything she had. The pain was blinding, overwhelming, and she heard herself screaming but couldn't stop. "Good," the doctor said. Again. She pushed again, and again, and again. Time stopped meaning anything. There was only the pain and the pushing, and DeLuca's voice telling her she was almost there. Just a little more. She was doing so good. And then, suddenly, the pressure released, and a baby cried. Serena collapsed back against the pillows, gasping, and the doctor lifted a tiny, squirming, screaming bundle into view. "It's a girl," the doctor said, smiling. "A beautiful, healthy girl." DeLuca made a sound like all the air had been knocked out of him. The nurse cleaned the baby quickly and placed her on Serena's chest, and Serena looked down at the tiny face, red and wrinkled and furious, and felt her entire world shift. "Hi," she whispered, touching the baby's impossibly small hand. "Hi, sweetheart." The baby's fingers wrapped around hers, and Serena started crying. Not from pain this time. From something else. Something bigger than fear or exhaustion or anything she'd ever felt before. DeLuca leaned over them, his hand trembling as he touched the baby's head. "She's perfect. She's so small." "She's perfect," he said again, and his voice broke. They stayed like that for a long time, the three of them in their own bubble, while the medical staff bustled around. Eventually, the nurse took the baby to weigh and measure her, and Serena watched like a hawk, not wanting to let her out of sight. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, the nurse announced, 20 inches long, all her fingers and toes present and accounted for. "Can I hold her?" DeLuca asked quietly. The nurse smiled and handed the baby to him, showing him how to support her head. He took her like she was made of porcelain, his huge hands dwarfing her tiny body, and Serena watched his face transform. All the hardness, all the walls he'd spent years building, they crumbled. He looked at his daughter and became someone new, someone softer, someone capable of love instead of violence. "Hey," he whispered to the baby, "I'm your dad, and I'm going to mess this up a lot, but I promise I'll try my best." The baby yawned, unimpressed, and Serena laughed through her tears. They named her Elena, after DeLuca's sister. It felt right. Like they were giving his sister a second chance, a new story that didn't end in tragedy. The first week home was chaos. Elena slept for 2 hours at a time if they were lucky. She cried for reasons they couldn't figure out. Feeding took forever. Diapers required a hazmat suit, and both Serena and Luca stumbled through it like they were defusing a bomb with a manual written in a language they didn't speak. "I don't know what she wants," Luca said at 3 in the morning, holding Elena while she screamed. "I fed her, changed her, checked her temperature. Why won't she stop crying?" "Because she's a baby," Serena said from the bed, too exhausted to get up. "They cry. It's what they do." "There has to be a reason." "The reason is she's 2 weeks old and doesn't know how to communicate any other way." Luca looked so lost, so completely out of his depth, that Serena almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Give her to me," she said. He handed Elena over carefully, and Serena tucked the baby against her chest, skin to skin. Elena's cries quieted almost immediately, reducing to soft whimpers, and then nothing. Luca stared. "How did you do that?" "I have no idea." "You're magic." "I'm her mother. It's different." "Still magic." He climbed into bed beside them, and they lay there in the darkness, listening to Elena's tiny breaths, both of them marveling at the fact that they'd created a whole person. "I'm terrified," Luca admitted. "Of what?" "That I'll fail her. That I'll mess her up the way my father messed me up." Serena shifted so she could look at him. "You're not your father." "How do you know?" "Because your father wouldn't have been here. He wouldn't have stayed up all night trying to figure out why she's crying. He wouldn't have built her a crib or read parenting books or looked at her like she's the most important thing in the world." She touched his face. "You're already a better father than he ever was." "I don't feel like I know what I'm doing." "No one does. We're all just making it up as we go." "That's terrifying." "Welcome to parenthood." He kissed her forehead, then Elena's, and pulled them both closer. "I love you, both of you, so much it scares me." "Good. It should." As the weeks passed, they fell into a rhythm. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't easy, but it was theirs. Luca learned how to change diapers with military precision. Serena figured out which cry meant hungry and which meant tired. They took turns with the night feedings, both of them operating on 3 hours of sleep and pure stubbornness. The house slowly transformed around them. The guest room became a nursery. The living room became a minefield of baby supplies. The kitchen counter was permanently covered in bottles and sterilizers and burp cloths. It was messy and exhausting and nothing like the peaceful life they'd imagined. It was perfect. One afternoon, when Elena was 2 months old, Serena found Luca in the nursery, just standing over the crib watching her sleep. "You okay?" she asked from the doorway. "I keep thinking about my sister," he said quietly, "about everything that happened to her. And I look at Elena and I think..." His voice caught. "I think about how easily that could have been her if I hadn't walked into that auction, if I hadn't stopped it." Serena moved to stand beside him. "But you did." "Only because I was there. How many other girls weren't that lucky? You can't save everyone." "I know, but I could have saved more." He looked at her. "I spent 15 years building an empire on suffering. I told myself it was necessary, that I was just surviving in a world that didn't give me a choice. But standing here, looking at her, I realize I did have a choice. I just didn't make it until it was almost too late." "You made it when it mattered." "Did I? Or did I just get lucky?" Serena took his hand. "I think you're being too hard on yourself. Maybe. But every time I look at Elena, I see all the children I didn't save, all the lives I destroyed because I was too focused on my own survival." He turned to her. "I can't undo what I did, but I can make sure she grows up in a world where she never has to make those choices." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." And he did. It started small. Luca reached out to organizations that help trafficking victims. He donated money anonymously at first, then less anonymously when he realized he could use his reputation to open doors that would otherwise stay closed. He met with former contacts, calling in old favors, and slowly built a network of people working to dismantle the same systems he'd once been part of. He testified, carefully, anonymously, against men he'd done business with, providing evidence that led to arrests. It was dangerous. It put him back on the radar of people who wanted him dead. But he did it anyway, because he couldn't look at his daughter and pretend the world she was growing up in was acceptable. Serena watched him transform, not into someone new, but into who he was supposed to be. The man he would have been if life hadn't beaten him down and forced him to become something else. "You're going to get yourself killed," she told him one night after he came home late from a meeting with prosecutors. "Maybe. That's not funny. I'm not joking." He sat beside her on the couch, exhausted. "But if I die trying to fix some of the damage I caused, at least Elena will know I tried. She'd rather have a living father than a dead hero. I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm just trying to be better than I was." "You already are." He looked at her, and his eyes were tired but clear. "I spent my whole life afraid of becoming my father. And then I realized the only way to make sure I don't is to actively choose to be different. Every day, in every decision." He touched her face. "You and Elena, you gave me a reason to make those choices. Before I was just surviving. Now I'm trying to live." Serena kissed him, soft and slow. "I'm proud of you." "Don't be. I'm just doing what I should have done years ago." "Still proud." Elena woke up then, crying from the nursery, and they both laughed. DeLuca stood, stretching. "My turn." "You sure?" "Yeah, get some sleep." He disappeared down the hall, and Serena listened to his voice through the baby monitor, singing a lullaby off-key while Elena's cries faded to silence. Time moved differently with a baby. Days blurred together. Weeks felt like months. Before Serena knew it, Elena was 6 months old, then 9, then a year. She learned to roll over, then sit up, then crawl. She babbled constantly, making sounds that almost sounded like words. She had DeLuca's dark hair and Serena's eyes, and she smiled with her whole face. On Elena's first birthday, they threw a small party, just the 3 of them and Marco, who'd become something like family. They sang happy birthday while Elena smashed cake into her face, laughing like it was the funniest thing she'd ever seen. Later, after Marco left and Elena was asleep, Serena and DeLuca sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the hills. "Can you believe it's been a year?" Serena asked. "No, feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time." "Do you miss it? Your old life?" He didn't answer right away. "Sometimes I miss the certainty, knowing exactly what I was supposed to do, who I was supposed to be, but then I come home and see you and Elena, and I realize I don't miss it enough to go back." He took her hand. "This is better. This is real." Even with the sleepless nights and the constant chaos, especially because of that, he pulled her closer. "I spent so long living in a world where nothing mattered except power and survival. This," he gestured at the house, at the life they'd built. "This matters. You matter. Elena matters. And I'd rather spend the rest of my life changing diapers and losing sleep than go back to what I was." Serena leaned against him, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. "I never thought I'd end up here." "Here as in this house, or here as in with me?" "Both." "Regret it?" "No." She turned to look at him. "I'm angry at how it started. I'm angry at your father for selling me. I'm angry at you for buying me. But I'm not angry at where we ended up." That's a lot of qualifiers. "It's complicated." "Yeah, it is." He kissed the top of her head. "But I'm grateful you stayed." "Me too." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sky turn from orange to purple to black. In the distance, they could hear Elena stirring, making soft noises through the baby monitor. "I'll get her," DeLuca said, standing. "No, I will. You've been with her all day. And you've been working. Sit. I'll go." She found Elena standing in her crib, holding onto the rails, bouncing with excitement. The moment she saw Serena, she reached up with both arms. "Mama." Serena's heart stopped. "Did you just—" "Mama," Elena said again, clear as day. Serena scooped her up, laughing and crying at the same time. "Adriano, get in here." He appeared in the doorway, alarmed. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. She just said mama." His face transformed. "Say it again, Elena. Come on." Elena looked at him, smiled, and said, "Dada." DeLuca made a sound like he'd been punched. He crossed the room in 2 strides and wrapped his arms around both of them, holding on like he never wanted to let go. "Our daughter just talked," he said, voice thick. "I know." She's a genius, obviously. They stood there in the nursery, the three of them tangled together, and Serena felt something settle in her chest, a kind of peace she'd never expected to find. Years passed. Elena grew from a baby into a toddler, then a little girl. She was fearless and stubborn and smart, with a laugh that could light up a room. She asked a million questions and never accepted "because I said so" as an answer. She was perfect, not in the flawless way, but in the real way, the way that mattered. DeLuca was a different man with her. He was patient when she spilled things. He read her stories every night, doing different voices for each character. He let her climb on him like a jungle gym and never complained when she pulled his hair. He taught her Italian and English simultaneously. He showed her how to plant seeds in the garden and explained where rain came from. He answered every one of her endless questions with the kind of seriousness that made her feel heard. And when she asked about his scars, he told her the truth. Not the details, she was too young for that, but the broad strokes, that he'd made mistakes, that he'd hurt people, that he'd spent a long time being someone he wasn't proud of. "But you're not that person anymore," Elena said, tracing the scar on the back of his hand. "No, I'm trying not to be." "Why?" "Because I wanted to be the kind of father you could be proud of." She looked at him with her mother's eyes, serious and considering. "I'm already proud of you." DeLuca's throat tightened. "You shouldn't be." "Too bad. I am anyway." He pulled her into his lap and held her close, and Serena watched from the doorway, her heart full. This was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not smooth, but real. On Elena's 5th birthday, they took her to the beach. She ran through the waves, shrieking with laughter, while Serena and DeLuca sat on the sand watching. "She's happy," Serena said. "Yeah, she is." "We did that. We gave her something neither of us had, a childhood without fear." DeLuca looked at her. "Do you think she'll be okay, growing up knowing what I used to be?" "I think she'll be okay because she's growing up knowing what you are now." Serena took his hand. "You're not defined by your worst moments. You're defined by what you do after them." "You really believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, I'd still be the girl standing on that auction platform, and you'd still be the man who bought her. But we're not those people anymore. We became something different, something better." He pulled her close, and they sat there watching their daughter play, and Serena thought about how far they'd come. From violence and fear to this, peace and love, and a little girl who didn't know how close she'd come to never existing. That night, after Elena was asleep, Serena and DeLuca lay in bed talking about the future. "What do you want?" he asked. 5 years from now, 10, what does that look like?" "This," she said simply. "More of this. Elena growing up. Maybe another baby, if we're feeling brave." "You want another one?" "Maybe. Do you?" He was quiet for a moment. "I want whatever makes you happy, but yes, I think I do. Even with all the sleepless nights and chaos, especially because of that." He rolled onto his side, looking at her. "I never thought I'd have a family, never thought I deserved one. But now that I do, I want more. I want to fill this house with children and noise and life. I want to prove that people can change, that you don't have to be the worst thing you've ever done." Serena touched his face. "You've already proved that." "Then let me keep proving it." "Okay? Okay? Okay? Let's have another baby." He kissed her, and it felt like a beginning instead of an ending. 3 years later, they had a son. They named him Marco, after the man who'd stood by DeLuca through everything and had become family. Elena was thrilled to be a big sister, and she took her role seriously, helping with feedings and diaper changes and singing to Marco when he cried. The house was loud and messy and full of love. It was everything Serena had never known she wanted, and everything DeLuca had never thought he could have. Some nights, when both children were asleep and the house was finally quiet, Serena and DeLuca would sit on the porch and talk about everything and nothing, about their past, about their present, about the future they were building one day at a time. "Do you think we're doing it right?" DeLuca asked one night. "Doing what right?" "This, parenting, life, all of it." "I think we're doing our best, and that's all anyone can do." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm grateful. For you, For this, for the chance to be more than what I was. You've always been more than that. You just needed someone to believe it. You believed it when I didn't. Someone had to. He pulled her close, and they sat there in the darkness, listening to the sounds of their children breathing through the baby monitor, and Serena thought about how strange life was, how the worst moments could lead to the best ones, how the people who hurt you could also be the ones who saved you, how love wasn't always pretty or easy, but it was always worth it. Years passed. The children grew. Elena started school and excelled at everything she tried. Marco learned to walk, then run, then climb everything in sight. The house needed constant repairs, but they tackled each problem as it came. Luca continued his work with anti-trafficking organizations, using his past to help others escape theirs. He testified in trials. He funded safe houses. He met with lawmakers about reform. It didn't erase what he'd done. Nothing could. But it was something. It was movement in the right direction. Serena went back to school, finishing her literature degree online while the kids napped. She started writing stories about broken people finding their way back to themselves, about redemption and second chances, and the messy reality of love. They built a life that wasn't perfect but was real. A life that acknowledged the past without being defined by it. A life that proved people could change if they wanted it badly enough. On their 10th anniversary, 10 years since that auction, since the moment everything changed, they took the kids to the beach where Elena had played years before. The children ran ahead, shrieking and laughing, while Serena and Luca walked hand in hand through the surf. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't walked into that room?" Serena asked. "Every day." "What do you think would have happened?" "I don't know. But I'm grateful I'll never have to find out." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "You saved me, you know, not the other way around." "I think we saved each other." "Maybe, but you gave me a reason to want to be saved. Before you, I was just going through the motions, surviving but not living. And then you showed up and everything changed." Serena looked at him, this man who'd bought her, who'd trapped her, who'd become her home, and she saw all the pieces of who they'd been and who they'd become. "I love you," she said. "For all your flaws and scars and mistakes, I love you. I love you too. Always." They kissed while their children played in the waves, and Serena thought about the strange, violent, beautiful path that had led them here. About how sometimes the darkest moments led to the brightest futures. About how love didn't erase the past, but could build something better from its ashes. She thought about the girl she'd been, scared and trapped and alone, and the woman she'd become. About how she'd found strength she didn't know she had. About how she'd chosen to stay when she could have run, and how that choice had changed everything. She thought about Luca, about the man he'd been, and the man he'd fought to become. About how he'd torn down his entire life to build something new. About how he'd learned that power wasn't found in control, but in letting go. And she thought about their children, running through the surf, laughing like the world was safe and good and full of possibilities. Because, for them, it was. And that was what mattered. Later that night, after the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, Serena stood in the doorway of their bedroom watching Luca get ready for bed. He caught her looking and smiled. "What?" "Nothing, just thinking." "About?" "About how far we've come. About how we started with fear and violence and ended up here, with this." He crossed to her, pulling her close. "You regret any of it?" "Parts of it. The beginning, the pain, the fear." She looked up at him. "But not the ending. Never the ending." "Good. Because I plan on spending the rest of my life making sure you never regret staying." "You already have." They climbed into bed together and Serena curled against him, listening to his heartbeat, steady and strong. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. Inside, their children slept safely in their beds. And between them, there was peace. Not the kind that came from forgetting, but the kind that came from remembering and choosing to move forward anyway. Because that's what life was. Not erasing the past, but learning from it. Not being perfect, but being present. Not running from fear, but walking toward hope. And as Serena drifted off to sleep, she thought about the message in their story. The one she wanted Elena and Marco to understand someday when they were old enough to hear the whole truth. That people weren't defined by their worst moments. That change was possible if you wanted it badly enough. That love didn't mean overlooking flaws, but choosing someone despite them. That family wasn't always about blood, it was about showing up, doing the P work, and choosing each other every single day. That you could start in darkness and still find the light. That broken things could be rebuilt into something stronger. That sometimes the person you were supposed to fear became the person you couldn't imagine living without. And that hope, real hope, the kind that survived violence and fear and loss, was the most powerful thing in the world. Because hope was what had saved them both. Hope that things could be different. Hope that they could be better. Hope that love could grow in the wreckage of their past and become something neither of them had ever thought possible. And in the end, that hope had been enough. More than enough. It had been everything.